What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing day 1 of 2 of this 3-round 2025 NFL mock draft with trades. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. It has not been fully updated for the Senior Bowl because we were boots on the ground, being able to watch it and enjoy it. I'm going back and reviewing all the tape before I actually finalize those decisions and end up actually fully changing the board, but not many things have changed, noticeably that you could see. Maybe a little bit of a push down for Josh Conerly, but not too much, but we'll describe that when we get into it. Of course, if you guys are also not used to being on the show, feel free to go and check out our sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy. For the big game coming up this week, they actually have a no sweat entry, which is when you end up putting your bet down, or you end up playing, because you can't use that word bet, and you end up playing, you end up actually being able to get your money back if you lose in bonus bets. So, essentially you're going to be having it like refunded. You can read the description yourself, but it basically makes it sweat free. And, again, that's something that is for new customers only. You also get a free Travis Kelce pick. So go take advantage of it. Use the code HAILMARY when you sign up so you can get that. It also sends me $60, full transparency. But on top of that, also a great brand. I love the brand. I end up actually having a flag that my lazy ass has not put up yet. So do it, enjoy it, and let me know what you guys pick. Shout out me on X because I would absolutely love to see what's up. But we all know why we're here at the beginning. And again, this is going to be 2 days. Day 1, round 1, just like the normal draft. Day 2, rounds 2 and 3. Because we actually want to talk about what we're going to do. This is a live mock draft. We want to be able to experience this together, and I like to show my logic because if I do something wrong, you guys can point the holes in my logic. I'd rather make a mistake once, and it makes better content for you and me. But this is going to be Myles Garrett trade. Okay, so first off, let's not mess around here. Let's get the man himself, Myles Garrett, into the trade simulator. He has formally requested a trade, and I discussed this actually much more in depth than I'll probably do today on my last 2-round mock draft with no trades, which was dropped yesterday, so please feel free to go check that out. But there's a couple key contenders that I want to mention for this pick or for this player, and I think there's some people brought up like every team will have an argument because every team should probably try to get a player of this caliber. And I will say the key contenders for me, and there are a good amount. The Bears, you got the Niners, and I'll explain in a second as well. But the Bears, the Niners, you continue scrolling down. Technically the Seahawks. I know Mike McDonald can get ballsy, but I'll say why I'm not a huge fan of that in a second. But technically you could talk about the Packers. I don't think that they're a legitimate player in this, but I also want to talk about the trio right here. Actually, the next 4 teams in the Lions, Commanders, Bills, and Eagles. And spoiler alert, just so in case you guys want to get a long story short, we're going to go with the Eagles this episode, and I'll describe why in a second. But we went Bills in our last mock draft. Again, I said no trades. It was obviously it would have shaken it up with a Myles Garrett trade, so we ended up doing it with the Bills. I think the Bills and the Eagles are the top 2 teams. I ended up saying it was the Bears and the Bills, but I didn't really think about the connections and the desire from Myles Garrett to play in Philly. He is on record saying that he wanted to play in Philly. I think the brother of the GM of the Browns is also in Philly. So there's a lot of connections there as well. The Eagles, with Josh Sweat possibly not being there for the long run, BG heading out, Bryce Huff not living up to his potential. I could absolutely see the Eagles being a prime candidate, which is why I'm electing to do that in this episode. But I still think it's key for us, while this is still very new news, to discuss the other possibilities. Washington is a team that I think could absolutely utilize Myles Garrett, right? I think Dan Quinn would love that. But I also do think that they came into the year with a lot of holes. Their best offensive lineman probably going to be out for a portion of next year as well. So I do think if Myles Garrett is looking at a continuous, an annual kind of contender, it has the bones for it for sure. But I do think that there's higher probability to go elsewhere and be able to still have that success without having the risk of Washington having some more struggles, which I do think that they did an excellent job this year. Jaden Daniels did an excellent job. Kingsbury did an excellent job. This whole entire team did an excellent job. But I do think that it was not fully representative of how their roster stacks up versus the rest of the league, even though they might have the best defensive line if you end up bringing Myles Garrett in, because it would be ridiculous. The Lions, I do think that, they are a legitimate contender. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that they're a legitimate contender. But when we're talking about risk factors here, when you lose 7 of your coaching assistants, I do think there is some sort of, I mean, you're hiring from within. It's a good thing. Like, it's great to see that you're building a coaching tree that essentially the whole entire NFL wants. It's a very positive sign. But it also could mean that, you're not going to get another Ben Johnson, right? You might not get another Aaron Glenn. And so there is that uncertainty there. But you're also getting back Hutchinson. Like, it's not a bad location at all. But if I am Myles Garrett and I'm sitting here and it's like, I've already expressed my interest to play in Philly, you're going to have Fangio next year. You're pretty much guaranteeing an upgrade over, like, you're pretty much having continuity with how the defense is ran currently, and you're upgrading it at the same time. There's just a very low risk factor there. And I'm going to mention the other teams I was talking about earlier. McDonald, absolutely, I think could try to make a strong push. Edge rusher is a position the Seahawks could be trying to target. At the same time, I also believe that, the Seahawks might not be viewed as the contender that some of these other teams would. And I do think, again, Myles Garrett has expressed his interest in Philly, so it's why I'm going to be leaning that way this episode. And also, I kind of forgot about the fact that the Jets owed the Eagles a minimum of a 3rd-round pick for Hassan Reddick. Just saying. But the Niners are absolutely a team that should be considered here. Same thing with the Bears. The Niners are a year off of being a legit Super Bowl contender, like a very legit one. And, again, a really, really good team. Really good team. They have a lot of cap space, but they also do have some veterans that are aging. Trent Williams, George Kittle. Like, George Kittle is also, if I'm not mistaken, going to be up for a contract next year. So there are areas where this team will need to completely retool. Edge rusher is one of them. Defensive interior is another. And so you could absolutely, I can think that the Niners would be the 3rd highest likelihood, in my opinion, based on their proximity. And proximity to, like, a good pick where you can end up seeing the Browns sniping their offensive tackle, the future, etc. And then the Bears, people are debating whether the Bears were actually going to be good enough for that, for being a contender in this. And I think they are. You have the head coach in place. Yes, there's a risk that Ben Johnson's not the head coach that he is offensive coordinator. We learned that with Josh McDaniels, right? On the defensive side, well, technically, but talking more about Spags. He's like a generational defensive coordinator, but not a great head coach. So I will just say there is that risk, but at the same time, it's a risk that you should be willing to take. Caleb Williams ended up performing valiantly for, the coaching that he did have, right? It wasn't conducive to him. The team was great, and I think he had rookie struggles, but, take it with a grain of salt, right? And then you have the weapons. You have an offensive line that's a piece or two away, which not many offensive lines are legitimately within striking range of being considered complete. It's not easy to do in the NFL, but the tackles are, they're solid. Jones as well as Darnell Wright. Like, gonna say, you kind of just need those 2 interior pieces, which not impossible to find. And then running back core. This is a deep running back class. So then you add on top of that with Flus. This was like a top 5 defense in the NFL. And then you add Myles Garrett into it. Legitimately there. So that's a very long-winded way. I said I wasn't going to explain it as in depth, but I actually did because I think it's worth it. But let's go with Philadelphia here, because you might say, oh my God, like, these picks, what the hell? Like, you're going to somehow find a way to make this work. And the answer is yes. So there is not a round 3 pick from the Jets here. I don't know why PFF hasn't done that, because you see there's some things like a round 7 from Seattle. I know it's a conditional, which is why they're not including it. And if I'm not mistaken, I thought that there was a pick from Miami as well. I might be wrong about that. But regardless of that, they have that extra 3rd-round pick. So I'm going to choose this one. But guys, just know there's an extra 3rd-round pick that's not accounted for here. So we're essentially like including, there's this pick for the Eagles is staying here. It's the Jets' 3rd-round pick. And you're going to get Myles Garrett for essentially a first. And then what I think here is that the Browns are still going to want to add some extra draft capital in here, and I think they're going to want to reshuffle their board. So they're going to ask for pick 95. And you might say, this is insane. I absolutely agree. Because, to be fair, this is essentially a 2nd-round pick. This is essentially a 4th-round pick, right? We're going to toss in Bryce Huff into this equation. So first off, before we do anything else, Bryce Huff has been a massive disappointment. He has. And I think that there's going to be a lot more optimism when it comes to Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt really taking that step up. And so Bryce Huff is going to be a part of this deal. We absolutely can still snipe guys, but this is too expensive. Too expensive. But I'm seeing this massive gap here, and I know Howie is a mastermind at being able to work the draft board. So I'm tossing in 2 picks right here as well. It allows Cleveland to reshuffle their board and bolster the front end, but it allows Philadelphia to do what they kind of do best, which is work their magic here in that day 3 range as well. Feel free to talk about this. I mean, again, if it's going to be strong enough pushback on 95, we could go 128 here, and I'm not going to be opposed to it. Like, I think you know what? I do think a day 2 pick is a little bit rich. I think actually for Cleveland, this is pretty respectable too. You have that gap as well. So maybe we would take out 200 and toss in, 217 instead. But regardless, I want to be able to shuffle the board where the Browns now bolster their front end and end up kind of giving the Eagles a little bit more of a cushioned back end. And remember, this is a free 3rd round pick that is not shown here, which is from the New York Jets. So we're going to be forcing this through. And again, this is going to be pretty straightforward. The Philadelphia Eagles are getting Myles Garrett and rebolstering their day 3 picks, and the Browns are getting an extra 1st round pick, an extra 4th round pick, and then 2 day 2 picks in 2026, along with someone who was looked at as a legit starting edge coming, or fringe starting edge coming into the year. And so the Eagles and Bryce Huff get to have their new start. Let's get into this. Let's have a great time. Starting out with the number 1 overall pick. The Titans, I do think they should be entertaining offers to trade it down. And I'm honestly starting to think that, it's going to piss people off. It is. You guys always, you guys know I like to preface things. Cam Ward should be the number 1 overall pick based on the fact that there's 2 teams at the top that need quarterback. But there's something that I really want to talk about really quickly here, and that's talking about schematic fit. And I know Brian Callahan talked about Shedeur Sanders being closer to Joe Burrow's archetype, right? Not an elite arm, not elite mobility, using processing over physical talent to make plays work. Now, do I think Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are number 1 and number 3 overall players? No. But I also think that in reality, teams are going to do self-preservation moves, and the Titans are not happy with their quarterback situation. Could they end up passing on somebody? Absolutely. But I think the best fit, and I think fit is super key for quarterbacks to work. I don't think that it's just talent. It really is fit. You look at Jaden Daniels, and if Jaden Daniels didn't have Cliff Kingsbury, he's not having the season that he did. And that doesn't change the amount of talent that he has. It just shows that when you're in the right situation, you perform at your best. And we saw Will Levis and Malik Willis end up failing, essentially, in a Brian Callahan system. Now, it doesn't mean that Cam Ward would fail, but when you're looking at the pluses and minuses to those prospects, they are closer to Cam Ward than Shedeur Sanders. And for Cam Ward's sake, I'm not happy with that. I don't want to put Cam Ward in that situation. And I'm not drafting Shedeur Sanders number 1 overall. So let's have a happy medium here. And let's talk about the New York Giants. They also have a 3rd round pick. And honestly, if I'm Tennessee, you might say this is super light in terms of draft capital. You're not going to get enough. So maybe we toss in a future round 3 pick in here, and we can call it a day from there. We can end up bolstering it that way. But I think if I'm the Titans, I'm perfectly happy doing this. I am not threatened by the Browns. I'm not. They might need an extra quarterback, but I really think that they're going to retool their roster and try to build from scratch. Maybe take somebody on day 3 and see if they can compete. But I do not see the Browns being desperate to be able to go after a QB. Versus the Titans, you're rebolstering that 3rd round pick. And you're giving the Giants the quarterback that, Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll need. So we're going to be making this move right here. Again, you could retool the picks in terms of that, 2026 pick. But we're having the Giants take a quick little swap-a-rooney here to select Cam Ward. And I know it's going to piss off Titans fans because Cam Ward is the better quarterback. But again, I'm 5'8", right? And there might be this beautiful 6'4" girl. I might be interested, right? But you just know that an NBA player is going to look a lot better with her, even if she is an amazing woman, than, a girl who's around my height, right? And so, we're talking about fits here. Callahan has not done well based on his short tenure with quarterbacks like Cam Ward. Daboll has had success with quarterbacks of that archetype. So I'm doing it both for us as a fan, for the prospects, and then also for the teams. So I think that's going to be super key for Cam Ward to get the right fit. That fit is Brian Daboll. I think it's super key for Shedeur Sanders to get the right fit. You try to force him into a system where he's going to try to have to like play make, not going to be the same, right? So you're going to have Cam Ward at the price of 2 third-round picks. I think it's worth it for New York. But I also think for the Titans, it's good to have yourself in a situation where Brian Callahan, from inside sources that I know, has a long leash. He's going to want a quarterback that is comfortable to him. Now, maybe that allows him to sit, wait, and kind of take what quarterback is there in 2026. But I also think that, if you end up looking at the best archetype of player and he is really comfortable with it, you end up rebolstering your picks, and you can end up getting yourself your guy there at number 3. Browns, we're going Abdul Carter, right? It's pretty straightforward. Nothing too crazy there. I mean, Abdul Carter is a fantastic edge rusher. He is the best pass rusher in the class. He may be number 10 on my board, but that is as an overall edge rusher because I think he is still growing and developing as a run defender. And at his size, I think that's totally fair. I think it's totally fair to say that Abdul Carter, as the product that he is, if you are needing somebody to play every single down, and remember, you got Bryce Huff, right? You have Bryce Huff in that trade. You have Isaiah McGuire, and now you have Abdul Carter as well. And so you have a nice edge trio right there going forward, and you just can allow Abdul Carter to be his best version of himself and, kind of lower those expectations of that run defense capability because you are developing him still. And if you're going to be willing to do that, then I think it's worth allowing Abdul to be in the system or in the role that suits him best in the short run as he develops to be the guy in the long run. And number 3 for the Titans, Travis Hunter could be the pick if you guys really wanted to, talking about like the guy who is, the best quarterback or the best player available, the generational guy. And, you got a free 3rd-round pick. I think Shedeur Sanders should be this pick right here if the Titans are looking at that, looking at Shedeur Sanders as kind of the guy for them. I think also if he ends up slipping past here, Raiders there at 6, Shedeur's going to play a Will Howard role extremely well, right? I think he'll be pretty much an elevated version of Will Howard for that mark. Apparently Will Howard, I mean, I'm not going to trust NFL Rookie Watch at all, has been tested at 22 miles per hour. I doubt that. I mean, when you're in shorts and a t-shirt, it is possible. But regardless of that, I think Travis Hunter would be awesome at this point to play like that Tyler Boyd role going forward in a Callahan offense. But I just don't see Shedeur Sanders not being again, people are going to get pissed because, you're not getting Cam Ward. But you got to look at the fit, man. I mean, if you put Cam Ward in a system that he's not going to do well in, you're screwing yourself and Cam Ward over. Don't do that. Go after Shedeur Sanders where he actually can perform well in this type of system because you've seen a player who is, albeit way more talented, but a similar style, have success and have a lot of success. So we're going to go Shedeur Sanders there at pick number 3. Rather than going pick number 1, it is my dream to have these 2 teams swap and be able to take the quarterback that is best for those systems at those respective spots. At number 4 for the New England Patriots, I'm going Travis Hunter here all day. Vrabel coming in, doing the thing, and he's going to want a defensive player. Mason Graham's awesome, but I do think that you can build around Travis Hunter as a cornerstone piece along with Christian Gonzalez going forward and having a no-fly zone. I think that's going to be far more attractive than having Mason Graham with interior pressure because it's a good defensive interior class. I don't know if I could say the same about the corner class at that rate. And I'd rather build around a no-fly zone than build around somebody who I don't think is fully polished at the rate that Travis Hunter is. So we're going to go Travis Hunter right there. At number 5 for Jacksonville, Tetairoa McMillan is going to be my option here. I know that there are certainly going to be some concerns over other positions that you can go after, Mason Graham, Will Johnson to be specific. But Liam Cohen, you got to think about what the coach is going to want here. And it's going to be a comment that I'm going to make about several teams while we're, going down this list. But Liam Cohen's going to want his version of Drake London, his version of Mike Evans. And I think it's totally fair. I think that Brian Thomas Jr. is excellent. And I think Tetairoa McMillan can complement Brian Thomas. I do think those two can work hand in hand. And having 2 young elite receivers on relatively cheap contracts for, 5 years, technically 4, because Brian Thomas is already a year in. Like, that is incredible, and it saves a lot of money to spend elsewhere. It helps out your quarterback, and this is a known archetype that can work with Liam Cohen, and so I'm going to go after Tetairoa McMillan. And number 6 for the Las Vegas Raiders, could try to trade out of this spot. You got Will Johnson here, Mason Graham. Like, I've already talked about it before. I know that my Panthers fans absolutely detest when I end up taking or trading up, with for Will Johnson or Mason Graham. But I just don't see too many teams like wanting to trade up, right? Like, again, defensive interior, you could try to see a team like the Saints to do it, but the Saints have so many holes, and I don't really think Mason Graham accomplishes the same type of like impact that the trade would cost. You look at cost benefit analysis, it's just not there. Again, I personally think that the Panthers could be in a good spot. I mean, the Panthers are a tough team. My 2 least favorite picks in the draft at the moment in the first round are the Panthers as well as the Cowboys. Those are my 2 least favorite spots. Like, hands down, least favorite. So with the Raiders, I'm looking at Jeanty and Johnson here. Mason Graham absolutely should be considered, but I just think that Jeanty and Johnson are the guys of note. And I think I ended up really loving the idea of Will Johnson. I'm still going to go Will Johnson at this point because I am looking and like, yeah, you can't trade down and end up getting Graham and Johnson. You're going to pretty much like sacrifice, air quotes, what you're going to do for Ashton Jeanty. And I love Jeanty to death. Not going to do that when Will Johnson's here. But with Will Johnson, I was pretty much talking about like if he has some athletic limitations. You know that who Pete Carroll coached who had athletic limitations, who was a Hall of Fame corner? Richard Sherman. Big, physical, smart, good ball skills. Not going to say no to having him again. So we're going to go Will Johnson right there. And Jacorian Bennett has been unreliably healthy. I do think that Will Johnson being a true corner 1 is going to be super duper key. Multiple pick sixes as well. At the start of the year, even when he was having some struggles early on, I think it was week 1, he ended up bouncing back and getting a pick 6. I mean, like, even when he loses, he wins. And that is what is so damn awesome. At 7 for the New York Jets, it really is Mason Graham or nothing at this point. I mean, I hate to say it, it is what it is, right? So we're going to go after Mason Graham. Let's not hold up the wait any longer. I mean, we're already like about 20 minutes in, and these videos usually are in that like 30 to 50 minute mark. So that's a pretty wide range. I should say like 35 to 45 minute mark. So let's try to keep it at least within reason. At number 8 for the Carolina Panthers, I do want to trade back. Like, you guys have no idea how much I want to trade back for you guys. Like, I've never thought about Ben Morrison on this team. I know edge needs help, and we're going to get it at 58. I mean, I just know for a fact there's going to be someone there. Honestly, I know that Mike Jackson's looked at pretty favorably, but Ben Morrison, when healthy, is unbelievable. Like, ridiculously good. I mean, literally before he got hurt, he's going to be 6'1", 190, super young, coming off a hip injury that ended off his year. But until then, he was the number 4 best player in the class. He's super young. He's gone up against wide receiver 1s for multiple years and has done extraordinarily well. I mean, look at this. He hasn't had a passer rating over 61 on his whole career. It is insane. And you look at that flexibility there, and I have yet to do this, which is why I'm like, I can't trade out because I want to, guys. I really do. There's nobody to trade out for. Like, there's nobody who wants to move up above the Saints, who wants to spend a 3rd or a 2nd round pick to do that? No disrespect to the players here, but there's no opportunity cost to, like, there's a way too much opportunity cost. I'm saying that wrong. It does not equate in terms of the value you'd spend to move up. So for the Panthers, if you have to stick and pick here, I always go James Pierce Jr. I think it's a great move, but I also think that if we continue ramming those same picks down our throats, so to speak, it's going to be, first off, boring for you guys, but second off, this is a legitimate option because Ben Morrison was a top 10 player coming into the year, and he is a top 10 player for me still. like a season-ending hip injury that he had mid-year, he probably was just like, all right, fuck it, I'm gonna go to the NFL. Like the lowest that he will go is 17, the lowest, because I don't think Al Golden's gonna let him slip that far. But you could talk about 16, 15, 14. I mean, hell, you want to talk about it, technically, you could talk about the Saints also wanting Benjamin Morrison. It's not out of the question for them to be going after a boundary corner with Paulson Adebo up for a contract. So I'm going to do it. I already know I'm going to get a ton of shit because I love you guys, but my Panthers and Cardinals fans are the most vocal. And so I already know I'm going to get some feedback, whether it's positive or negative. But I think Ben Morrison is a legit corner one. And you pair him up with J.C. Horn, and you get yourself, very similar to what I was talking about earlier with Travis Hunter, a no-fly zone that you can build the rest of the team around. And I don't think Ejiro Evero would have any issues with an elite corner core. So I'm pretty happy with that in retrospect. At number 9 for the Saints, let's see if we can get... Is there anybody worth trading up for at this point? I could see that the Niners could try to make a move up here. The Cowboys as well, if the Cowboys wanted to jump the Bears for Jeanty. Honestly, I could see the Niners trying to make this move because I'm a huge fan of Josh Simmons, and there's not many tackles I trust at right tackle in this draft. There is not. But to be fair, for the Niners, I do feel like on day 2, I mean, it's going to be tough, but you'd have to trade up. But you can end up getting Ozzy Trapilo if you really wanted to. So you don't need to do that. And then with Robert Saleh as your DC, in retrospect, I don't think that you guys are going to be going after... you guys are not going to be going after offensive tackle in this mock draft because I want to test out the theory that that Robert Saleh is going to play a massive... you guys are going to miss out on Myles Garrett, so... I do think that it's going to be worth at least looking at. But for the Saints, I don't think there's a team that's going to trade up here. You could talk about the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys, let's look at their draft capital really quick. It's not good. It's not. And I mean, for the Saints, I guess you're getting free picks. You know what I mean? Like for the price of a 3rd round pick to move up for Jeanty in a deep running back class, that's not really worth it. And I want it to be worth it. I want to force that like ridiculously badly. I really do. But I can't. I just can't feasibly do that. So when you end up looking at what the Saints are going to do via sticking and picking, there's a couple routes you can go. Wide receiver Tet is here, which he's not going to be, but if he is, that's going to be great. But you have to look at the head coach. And I described this in yesterday's mock draft in depth, and I'm going to do it in a more surmised version now just for time's sake. But Tyler Warren's going to be my pick. So Tyler Warren, you're going to say, oh my God, like there's no reason to take tight end that high. Brock Bowers fell. Brock Bowers shouldn't have fallen, first off. We all know that now. He was my number 2 player in the class. He should have went at number 4 or number 5. It just, as good as those players are, like he is the best tight end, arguably, he might be the best NFL tight end in NFL history, right? And you can't get those. You might say, oh, they cost, $16 million. So you look at the cap savings. How many tight ends are you going to draft that are instantly a top 5 tight end in the NFL? And I'm not saying Tyler Warren is on Brock Bowers' level. That's why he's here at 9. But I'm saying he might be a tier below. And he's an instant top 5 tight end in the NFL, I think, if he comes in. Like day 1, he might be top 5 tight end in the NFL. You can't pay those because they don't exist on the free agency market. So you're acting as if, like, if you're trying to make the argument that you're trying to, like, do the most in terms of savings, right? You're not going to. You can't. You're talking about a hypothetical that is nearly impossible because any team that has a top 5 tight end is going to pay them. So you're giving yourself not the savings, but you're giving yourself the access to a top 5 tight end. And you look at Kellen Moore's track record. Los Angeles, Dallas, Philly. All 3 of those spots, he utilized tight ends better than they did before him. And he loves tight ends. The best thing you can do for Carr, for Rattler, is to be able to give him a reliable physical weapon. That's something they don't have. If you can't get Tetairoa McMillan, get Tyler Warren. And again, I wanted to trade down for it. I just don't see someone who's willing to dance. At number 10 for the Chicago Bears, Ashton Jeanty is the quick, easy pick for me. Again, people are going to talk about interior offensive line. I absolutely agree. Absolutely. but you do not need to spend the number 10 overall pick on a guard. You do not. Now, I love the idea of going Josh Simmons here, putting him at guard, and having the vision for when Braxton Jones is ready to go bye-bye, putting him there. But I do not think that is your best return on investment. I don't. And it could be, but when you look at what the offense that you're going to want to run under Ben Johnson, it is heavy running back focused, and you have the receiving weapons. So if we could end up targeting an interior offensive lineman, which I know for a fact is going to be there at 39 or 41. So you're already solving at least one of the interior offensive line positions. And you can end up addressing the running back position with the best possible option in this entire draft. And I saw somebody try to comment that nobody drafts running back high anymore. They apparently have amnesia because Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs happened literally a couple years ago. And both of them have appeared to be massive assets to their offenses. Yes, those offensive lines were complete when they got dropped in. This offensive line easily could as well. How many offenses have 2 tackles that they're happy with? Like the Bears are one of them. You think about Jones. When healthy, reliable. Wright, when healthy, reliable. Like you're talking about a legit solid tackle group. So you got to fix the interior of the offensive line. That's going to stop you from going after a legendary level running back who is literally setting records damn near. That's not how it's going to work, right? Ashton Jeanty is going to be a top 12 pick. That's how the cookie crumbles. And so we're going to be taking him to an offensive system that truly values the running back position. And before you say it's a bad pick because you need to go O-line, get your head out of the sand. Understand that there are 7 rounds. We have 2 second-round picks. One of those will be used on interior offensive line. So, again, keep your mind open. Be patient. Because the moment you try to act like the only addition that you're making in the entire offseason is the first-round pick, starts making you look a little bit on the unwise side. So let's not do that. Let's be here together and understand that Ashton Jeanty is going to be a massive help out to Caleb Williams. And it's going to be a massive assistance to whoever is looking to upgrade, whoever is willing to, put stock in the Bears. I think it's going to be a massive asset there nonetheless. Number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers. It's offensive tackle or edge, right? And I have a vision for this pick. I have a vision for what the Niners are going to do. I'm going to trade up at 43 to take Ozzy Trapilo because I don't think he'll go in the first round, but this dude's a fantastic right tackle. No clue why PFF has him as like number 64. Where's Ozzy on my board? Ozzy's pretty damn high. He's at number 24, excuse me. So, you're going to be able to move up for him. Not many people are going to want to take him in the first, but this dude is a rock solid right tackle, and he looks good in the Niners colors. So, I love Josh Simmons. I think it's a great pick. But I also think that with someone like James Pierce here, you look at Robert Saleh and when he ended up drafting Will McDonald, and I could see so many similarities, the athleticism, the power for the size, and I think that's going to be the dark horse curveball here. So we're going to go after James Pierce, and we're going to see how the board falls, because James Pierce is fantastic. A lot of people have him as their edge one. I think he's a super stud, and so we're going to be sticking it and picking it. At number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, with the players who have been selected off the board, I could see a team like the Indianapolis Colts getting a little aggressive here because I think that Malaki Starks should be the 13th overall pick. It's boring as hell, but I think that it's like a very legitimate pick. And my dream picks for the Colts are Tyler Warren, Malaki Starks, and Benjamin Morrison. 2 out of those 3 are gone. And there's only so many teams that are going to want to continuously move up. For the Cowboys, I do not see a player that I genuinely am passionate enough about to move up to this spot. And so I think it is the perfect opportunity for the Cowboys to move down a little bit and the Colts to move up a little bit to secure a guy who I think will end up doing really well. Now, my only concern is that I think Lou might end up liking Eamon Worry more. And that's because he wants him to play a Jesse Bates role as a center fielder. That's like the only thing holding me back from truly executing this trade. And looking at teams that have a lot of draft capital, I don't see too many that are going to be gung-ho at trying to move up for Malaki Starks. So, I mean, it really depends. I just don't like the other picks here, and I'd rather move up for Malaki Starks then throw a bone for Eamon Worry at 14 because I don't, again, see any teams that are going to have enough capital or desire to move up to 14. So I'd rather spend a little draft capital to get a player who is worth it than go and reach for one because I wanted to be stagnant at 14. And for this, I think this is going to be an easy pick 115. It's super simple, super easy. You might get back 211 in this equation, but 120 was 15 to 17. I don't think that's going to be the case if you end up tossing in another pick, unless you want to toss in future draft capital, which technically speaking, you could do. You could put in a round 6 and end up getting 211 back to rebolster your board and keep the same quantity. And you know what? For the Cowboys, you have 2 7th rounds without a 6 next year. I think that'll be worth it. You can end up tossing the Giants pick in there if you want, but that's not going to affect this mock draft. We're having the Colts jump up for Malaki Starks and allowing him to be a flexible piece there and lose defensive system. Number 13 for the Miami Dolphins. So you guys made an excellent point that you guys have drafted tackle in the first round, but the player that you're drafting here is not a tackle. That's the problem. And I think that we're looking at this team in too simple of a light. Okay, we need offensive line. We're going to take it round 1. Greer's not going to draft a guard round 1. He'll do it round 2, right? You got Hunt that he's drafted before in round 2. Solomon Kindley, I think, was a round 3 pick. But he's willing to spend day 2 picks on the interior of the offensive line. I've never seen him spend it day 1, even though I think he should. But I think this is the prime opportunity to throw a curveball in here and go after defensive interior early with a player who I saw slip a little too much in my most recent mock draft, and Walter Nolen, whose stock is sky high. He's extremely explosive, and you look at the fact that, yeah, he is unpolished, but who did they draft last year who was extremely athletic, who had a ton of pass rushing potential and was still developing all around, but still had a solid profile, and it was Chop Robinson, their first round pick. Walter Nolen has a very similar profile to Chop Robinson coming out in terms of the level of development as well as the athletic profile, but translated to the inside, right? Obviously, no one's going to be that level of athletic on the interior of the offensive, or interior of the defensive line, I should say. And I think that there's going to be a lot of love here. So we're going to go Walter Nolen out of Mississippi there for the Dolphins and, address that defensive interior with proper value. He is right under that 300-pound mark. He's not 305. I think he's like 295. But, the explosiveness and the power is ridiculous. I would love to see like how he's going to perform in the NFL, but I think he'd be a good asset there for Miami. At number 14 for the Dallas Cowboys, I think this is where I'm going to take a swing on offensive line and or wide receiver. So there's 2 positions. I'm looking at Matt Golden because I want someone who can play boundary. Emeka primary slot, Luther Burden at 5'10 primary slot. It says 5'11, probably going to be 5'10. So we got 2 guys who are primary slots. I know CD can be flexible, but I want someone who's going to be a true boundary. It's going to be Matt Golden, who would be my selection for wide receiver. It's Matt Golden or it's Josh Simmons. And here's my pitch for Josh Simmons, right? You can end up kicking Tyler Guyton back to right tackle, move Terrence Steele to guard, or get rid of him. I do not care. I think that Hoffman absolutely can hold up at right guard for when Zach Martin decides to bye-bye. If that is going to be this year, which I think it probably should be, season-ending injury at the end of the year, not really great. But Josh Simmons is the best tackle in the class. And you're sniping him here at 14. Great athlete. And if he needs to, he can play guard in the short run if you want to have, Steele play out his deal. And then you can put him at that right guard spot as he gets to finally polish up and move to left tackle as Tyler Guyton moves back to his native position at right. I do think, though, that the Cowboys aren't going to play musical chairs like that. And it's almost an admission of defeat because I assume there's going to be some sort of ego there to try to keep Tyler Guyton at left tackle. Let me know what you think about that, but I'll actually go after wide receiver here, and we're going to throw the curveball that Matt Golden is the second receiver taken. He was my wide receiver 14 coming into the year out of Houston when, he was clearly not in most people's top 15 receivers. It's pretty awesome to see that end up unfolding. And especially with the guys who have returned to school and such, Matt Golden probably ended up being a top 10 guy for me coming out of Houston. And then he went to Texas and ended up going off. So boundary receiver there. I mean, you look at his boundary reps. I love that. He also can work in the slot if need be. But this dude was absolutely dynamic and versus some of the best talent, including the one that you guys just traded for the Colts to get. He ended up putting up like 150 yards. So really, really good player. I'm still evaluating the wide receiver class for updated grades, and so I love Matt Golden. I don't think he'll end up being a top 15 guy on my board, but I'm happy to give him the love that he deserves. At number 15 for the Atlanta Falcons, a lot of good choices here. A lot of good choices. Josh Simmons is slipping, which is kind of ridiculous. It is what it is. But I'm looking at a couple players here, and you look at Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker's great, right? He's primarily a linebacker to me, though. And then you got Jahad Campbell, and you got Mike Green. And then you also have Mykel Williams, to be fair. But I think that Raheem Morris's defense prefers someone who has the ability to stand up. So I'm looking at Mike Green and then the other two guys respectively. I don't think Jahad Campbell is going to be looked at as a legitimate edge rusher the way that I want him to be. So I'd want him to go on a team that will just use linebackers as blitzers and then kind of let him be super flexible. I pray to God he falls to the second and goes to Green Bay. That's a hot take, but Jalen Walker is the guy who's intriguing me the most at this pick because, again, he can be that pure linebacker and be an instant asset there. And it opens up the opportunity if you do feel confident going after an edge rusher as well in round number 2 to have a nice little lightning and thunder punch there. So I'm going to open, well, we could also trade back. This team is pretty damn barren on picks. Damn, it is embarrassing. I did not realize y'all had 4 picks. With Josh Simmons on the board, let's look at some teams that want to jump up here. And I'm looking actually pretty heavily right here at the Seahawks, man. I mean, the Seahawks need a guard to be an eventual tackle as well. Abe Lucas is just not healthy enough. And then we have the Cardinals who just brought on the offensive line coach from Ohio State. And I think it's a legitimate chance that you go after Josh Simmons. I also think that right here, the Bengals are going to be taking an offensive lineman. So with all that being said, let's screw over the Cardinals. I know it's not going to be an actual screw over because I know my Cardinals fans would go livid if I took an offensive lineman, but it is a legitimate thing. And so 17 to 15 was pick 120. 18 to 15 will be pick 136. Plus, I think pick 185, which allows Atlanta to get 2 more key picks in here and allows the Seahawks to honestly move up and select the player that's best for them. Now, you could go Mike Green. It would be super duper fun, but I also think that the Seahawks are in a great position to where you can do a multitude of routes and be perfectly happy. But my vision here is for Josh Simmons to play guard in the short run. And even though he didn't do too well in 2022, at San Diego State, he played a full year of right tackle. So I want him to get back to health, which, he's been recouping for the entire year, and be able to play right tackle again for the long run, but play right guard in the short. So I'm actually going to go Josh Simmons there because I think there's a legitimate chance that the last time a tackle from Ohio State who was super athletic was available, the Cardinals were the ones to snipe him. And now the Cardinals are sitting here at 16 without a tackle that has played right tackle from Ohio State. And they're going to have to look elsewhere, which I think will end up yielding a better result for my Cardinals fans. But I also do think that Josh Simmons is a very, very possible pick at 16. But regardless, we're back. And so I'm looking, Mykel Williams would be awesome because you have that flexibility. You do need someone in your front 7. That's the thing. You need someone in your front 7. I think Tyleik Williams is extremely underrated. It's a bit rich at 16 for most people, and I respect that. So you could try to make a move back here. Monty is that type of dude to be able to go up and down the draft boards respectively. And I mean, the Bengals are sitting here. They're probably going to be taking interior offensive line with Will Campbell or Grey Zabel. That's where my head's at with them. So is there any team that is going to be looking at interior offensive line? I don't think so. Not within striking range. So I'm perfectly happy with that part of this. Is there any weapon here that I think would be exciting for a particular team to use more draft capital to move up? I don't think so. I personally don't. You got Josh Conerly here, but Josh Conerly, he was already that mid first round player, did not have the best, but far from a bad Senior Bowl week. So I think he's still properly valued at that spot. So I just don't think anybody's going to pay to move up here. And I think that, when you look at this team, you got to go front 7. Right? That's going to be where my head's at. Shamar Stewart might be that player that genuinely would capture y'all's eye At 280 pounds, he did an excellent job being a gap penetrator, but I also like having players who are extremely flexible. You got Mike Green here, and he is someone who converts speed to power very well. He's the hot name at the moment. He's going to test out very well. Obviously, metrics-wise, he's off the charts, 17.5 sacks this past year. And he is, like, I will say, Mykel Williams might fit this team better. Like, Shamar Stewart could kick to the interior of the defensive line on certain reps if need be. But I honestly think that Mike Green's going to be the one that captures people's eye, because you guys don't have a legitimate edge one at the moment, even though I think BJ Ojulari should be. Mike Green's going to be my selection here. We're going to see what happens. I just think it's very realistic that he ends up going in this range. At 17 for the Bengals, I was talking about this before. You got Campbell and Zabel. I think Campbell goes before him realistically, so we're going to do that as well here. You can, of course, go after the edge rusher route, but I just think that it's so paramount to protect your most valuable asset, and your guards were ranked the worst in the NFL. Like, I'm pretty sure they're in the 50s in terms of PFF ranking for offensive guards, and Will Campbell has that upside to play tackle. So you have someone who's a short-term fill at guard who's going to massively increase your productivity there. And then if injury occurs, you have a contingency plan there at tackle. So it's best player available. I think it's the right thing to do. And I don't trust you guys developing edge rushers. I just don't. So I'd rather not put either of us in that situation, I should say. Number 18, we got the Falcons. And again, I talked about, before with Jalen Walker. I think this is perfect right here as well, because Jalen Walker's my dream pick right now for the Buccaneers. So I want to be able to disarm the Buccaneers of having that weapon while also still getting those 2 picks. And you get yourself someone who could be a really, really, really good linebacker who is still developing as an edge rusher. And that's extremely valuable to also disarm your opponent. But Tampa Bay is a dark horse candidate for Myles Garrett. And so if you want to get your quasi Myles Garrett, you could go after Mykel Williams here, who has a little bit of a limited production sample size. But as he got healthier, he got better. To me, that is incredible. We're going after Mykel Williams here out of Georgia. And number 20 for the Denver Broncos. I was listening actually to Sean Payton on the Kay Adams show, and he was talking about like must, needs, and wants. Fun fact, that's going to be the title of a video that will be coming up in the near future, because I thought that was incredible. But he ended up talking about how you guys want a joker being a tight end or a running back that is able to play inside, so not just like a receiver, but has an elite receiving capability. To me, when you look at the options there, Colston Loveland can spit out that definition, but Colston also probably going to be more of a slot tight end. He's not a bad blocker, but I'd prefer Elijah Arroyo in round number 2, Harold Fannin in round number 2. I just personally think like Jackson Hawes, honestly, in day 3. Like, I just personally think those guys are better value than Colston Loveland. And I think that you look at the running backs, and I think Omarian Hampton's the guy who I'm going with, FYI. But you're looking at that joker. Who's going to be that type? Brashard Smith? I mean, I love him. Pony up, baby. But I'm a little bit concerned as to whether he could be someone who really elevates this running core, because it is lacking. And you do need an RB1 who can receive. And Amari might not be like the GOAT receiver to where you have a legit Kamara. And you're not going to get that really with any of these guys, right? Krosky Merritt's actually really fun. I haven't dug into his tape too much yet, because I'm pretty sure he had to sit this entire year based on some red shirt stuff. But I mean, you look at Trevor Etienne, maybe that could be the guy that you guys snipe on day 3. But you guys do need someone who could be a primary ball carrier. And I think Omarian Hampton provides a lot of support there. Now, I will say he ended up talking about the middle of the field, like linebacker, safety as well. And I will say Nick Emmanwori is someone who should be considered in this range. I just don't think, I love Emmanwori too. He's my safety 1 coming to the year. He's still my safety 1 now if you classify Malaki Starks as a defensive back. But, I mean, you talk about Emmanwori or someone who could be like truly transcendent as a running back. I would prefer to go after Omarian Hampton. So I'll throw my curveball in there and go Omarian Hampton to the Broncos, leaving the Steelers at 21. And you got some great players here. Shamar Stewart, You got Banks, Egbuka, Burden. Egbuka and Burden, I've already talked about it. I think they're primary slots. We have Austin. We have Wilson. Unless you're going to give up on them, which, again, these players are better, then I just don't see us doing that move. Like, we need a boundary weapon. And so you look at the quantity of players available, and I don't know if offensive line is worth the move up here, but you look at tight end, and I've made this move before, and I'm so sorry to my Chargers fans because I am going to piss you off royally. I've done this move before, and I think I'm going to do it again because this team needs to get ballsy because their most valuable weapon probably is retiring. Kansas City. I think for the price of pick 66, I'm happy. I'm happy for both teams, right? Because you still have the first, second, third, and fourth round pick. Like, maybe you end up getting like pick 225 in return or something, but I think this is great for both teams. It's a simple, straight up deal, and Kansas City moves up above their own rival to select Colston Loveland, who I think could work really well in Kelsey's role. So we're going to be going after that route with Colston Loveland. Pick number 22 for the Chargers ended up getting sniped by Colston Loveland, or by the Chiefs with Colston Loveland. And it happens. I mean, it does. I mean, that sucks. But a couple areas for the Chargers to upgrade. Interior offensive line, which is perfectly reasonable here. And honestly, Grey Zabel is starting to be really intriguing to me. Tight end or like a weapon, which, again, both of those weapons are slot specific unless you are guaranteeing that Ladd McConkey, who had a lot of success, is going to be moved to a new role, which I think he can. But, like, again, you're talking about a first-round pick here, and you're going to be forcing someone who is successful out of their role to accommodate a new guy. So maybe not the best move. But you could go Kelvin Banks here and go interior offensive line. That would not be a bad move. But I also think Grey Zabel might be a better interior than Kelvin Banks is. So is there a team that wants to move up here, jump the Packers? Because the Packers are going to look at some cornerback talent, which, again, it does drop off. It does. It drops off for sure. I don't think there's going to be somebody there. But Shamar Stewart is certainly intriguing. I think edge rusher-wise, you can wait till 86 for Josiah Stewart and have someone who's an instant system fit. I don't think you need to force that at all. Running back, that's more of a day 2 issue. And so, I mean, you guys kind of are stuck in a little bit of a pickle here. I'm going to look at the offensive line. And I'm going to go after someone who probably will be more happy on the interior. And I don't see a vision for Banks. I think you'll piss him off if there's no vision for tackle. For Zabel, I think we kind of have that understanding. And same thing with Membu. Like, Conerly and Banks, you take them if you're right now the Texans, it's like, hey, I could put you at a tackle in the foreseeable future. There's no way you could put him at tackle for the Chargers. You just don't do that also to players. So I'm going to go after Grey Zabel here. He was a massive riser, a legit first-round talent. I already know it's going to ruffle feathers, but Grey Zabel is fantastic. I mean, he already was a legit first-round player to me. Before the Senior Bowl, he was number 27. So after the Senior Bowl, where he really proved it, I think he'll be moving up into the top 20. One of the best offensive linemen that I've seen coming out of FCS. I think it is the best. Like, he is fantastic. Aggressive, like, really polished for the experience that he has. I think this dude's going to be an absolute animal. And again, in case of injury, he can move to tackle. At 23 for the Green Bay Packers, corner is going to be the name of the game. But you got guys like Shamar Stewart here, which I don't think you could pass on if he is here. Like, there's just a certain point where you can't say no. And if Grey Zabel were here, I think you could take him and move him to center because that is something that they're debating on doing. Granted, round 1, corner's the more likely position, but I've already taken Morrison, and it is starting to get to be a little bit of slim pickings. I love Darien Porter and Azareye'h Thomas. I'm trying my best to push them down a little bit more. Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka is not out of the question either. But when you have the potential of Shamar Stewart, and you know you have all these other defensive pieces there, and you can kick Shamar to the interior of the defensive line and use him as a flexible piece, I don't know if Jeff Hafley would say no to that. And, I mean, you could try to trade out and let a team like the Bills jump up at this point, but, I mean, also with the interior offensive lineman available, you look at a couple teams that might be looking for interior offensive line. They could try to move up. You can see the Ravens right here trying to jump 2 teams that are looking at interior offensive line. Low-key, not a bad idea. But I mean, I think that Shamar Stewart will be taken within short proximity, and his upside is going to be looked at as elite. If I ended up having, he moved up my board for the Senior Bowl. If I ended up having him like graded based on pure potential, which I have now a potential grade, he actually grades out being top 15, if not top 10 in the class. So the potential's through the roof. And if you have that patience, which the Packers kind of do, he is better than Lucas Van Ness coming out. I'll say that. I wasn't a big Lucas Van Ness guy, though. So, 24 for the Minnesota Vikings. You got some great weapons, and you have some amazing offensive linemen still available. That's kind of the blessing of this class. I think this is a prime opportunity to trade back. And I'm looking right now really heavily at the Cleveland Browns, who, again, traded away Myles Garrett. And you're going to be in good position, but I think that you could be in even better position if you really draft a top-end offensive tackle. Look at all these picks that you have. And no, hello, Bills. No, we are not using you. We're using the Browns, so even more to that fact. And for the Vikings, you can keep your first-round pick, right? And for 6 spots, like, again, 15 to 17, I think is the equivalent of, 24 to 30, which is like roughly like pick 128. But we'll go pick 102 here to be able to make this move, which adds a really, really key piece here for the Vikings. You could trade back further, but you lose that 5th-year contract, and I think it's going to be super key. You could try to finagle pick 94 here. If you guys are really that butthurt about it, we can adjust it in the next episode because the first pick is the Browns. We could just end up swapping with the Vikings there. So let me know what you think about that. Again, the Browns are basically sending 102 to move up with Minnesota and end up selecting their offensive tackle of the future. So far, we went Abdul Carter. I'm actually going to look at right now Josh Conerly over Kelvin Banks, which, again, you can get pissed all you want. I think Josh Conerly is a better tackle. He has his one rep where he got embarrassed by Mike Green. He was playing right tackle, which is not the role he would play on this offense. You want Conerly to play left tackle. Super flexible, very, very, very good re-anchor. Kelvin Banks has slower foot speed. That's what I'm worried about. But we're going to go Josh Conerly there at 24. Leaving at 25 for the Houston Texans to look at Kelvin Banks or Emeka Egbuka. No disrespect to Luther Burden, but Emeka Egbuka has that connection with CJ. That's going to be super crucial in a beaten-up receiving core. And with the value in the interior offensive line on day 2, it's going to be crazy, but I'm going to let Kelvin Banks slip. We're going to go Emeka Egbuka here because that receiving core is absolutely gutted. And Emeka Egbuka is just rock solid. You pair him back up with CJ Stroud, and it is fireworks. At 26 for the Los Angeles Rams, this is an easy one. I mean, Kelvin Banks is here. I know that there are other positions that you should address, but sometimes you just got to go best player available. If you're that butthurt about losing out on Kelvin Banks, Conerly would be my selection here if he were here. So feel free to change that in your mind. But Banks falls to 26 for foot speed reasons more than anything. But I think he's equally as good as a tackle as he is a guard. It's just open field foot speed is just a little bit different for me. And, he's a true left tackle. I love that about him. He's had a lot of success. I think the Rams could end up using him and developing him into the star tackle that he should be. But regardless, I'm going to take him there at 26. 27 for the Baltimore Ravens. Excellent value everywhere. And wide receiver wise, I mean, we also could look at some edge rushers here. You got Jahad Campbell being someone who would be a freak on this squad. But you look at the interior offensive line, I think that you absolutely could be looking at Donovan Jackson here. And you have the vision for that left tackle spot with Ronnie Stanley. Donovan Jackson did an excellent job at left tackle, and he's a first-round player. So if he's not taken here, I can guarantee you he's taken at 31. At the very minimum. You could talk about 29 if you want to. So I'm going to be taking him in the first. No doubt about it. And so we're going to be taking Donovan Jackson here. We're having a quick run on offensive lineman here at the end of the first as somebody who's going to be that great guard role if you do bring back Stanley on short term. But long term, you're having your true left tackle there. And he did very, very well at left tackle. At 28 for the Detroit Lions, I'm going to see, I think edge rusher is super duper key. With Nick Scorton, it's kind of impossible to pass on. He'd be my next pick there at 29 or 30. So I'm pretty happy with that regardless. So I'm actually going to send it through. I'm not even going to think about this too much. Nick Scorton is he's so damn good, man. He is so damn good. I mean, he really is really underrated. His movement skills for his size are ridiculous. If you want to get somebody at 28 who is as close to Myles Garrett as you can ask for a 28th overall pick, you're not going to get much better than Nick Scorton. At 29 for the Washington Commanders, Luther Burden's going to be my like instant gut reaction pick. Jahad Campbell, I love him to death, but like you need to be able to focus on a couple positions. Wide receiver, getting more legit top-end weapons, super duper key. Edge rusher, I trust Dan Quinn to make it work. I do. And corner, we absolutely could snipe some corner value here, but I do want to try to have it a little bit more realistic where I don't know if Amos, Zaire Thomas, and Porter are legit round 1 talents, but you know, it certainly is a choice there. But I do think Luther Burden is a very likely first round option and goes at 29. At 30 for the Buffalo Bills, like edge rusher, defensive interior, boundary receiver, like that's what's up. And Tyleik Williams is incredible value at this point. I'm just super happy with how these guys are falling. Kenneth Grant's great, but I really just want something that is like steady Eddie. And I want Tyleik Williams on this squad. Tyleik Williams is my defensive interior too. I think this dude is just rock solid with ridiculous pass rushing potential that Ohio State does not know how to coach. And I think Buffalo can coach it. So I'm going to have some faith there and take him at 30. At 31 for Minnesota Vikings. Debating moving out of here again, even though Armand Membu is, or like Kenneth Grant, those are like my gut reactions. You're losing 3 corners as well, so I am pretty happy going after one of these guys. I would go Jahdae Barron, but I think the one out of the 3 corners that you're most likely to bring back is Murphy, and that's the role I'd want for Jahdae Barron. So I don't really see that as being a primary guy to target. Again, really, really good corners, which if you move back, FYI, probably going to be a legitimate option for you. So looking at the teams that could move up into this position, who is worth moving up for? You look at Kenneth Grant here, and I mean, I'm looking at a couple teams in here that could be interested in Kenneth Grant, but not too many. Again, I already spent some draft capital for the Browns to the point where I don't see this being a move that the Browns need to make. I don't see any players that the Browns are going to be super desperate to acquire at said pick. Jahad Campbell's awesome. Remember that Philadelphia ended up trading for Myles Garrett in the beginning. Jahad Campbell's awesome though. I mean, I might want to move up with the team just for Jahad Campbell. And low key, the Steelers of all teams, that's not a bad pick for the Steelers to use him as an edge. Like that is a dark horse pick for the Steelers. I already know I'm gonna really piss some people off if I go that route. But at the same time, Tyler Booker, Armand Membu, man. I mean, you can't go wrong with these players. They are supremely talented. Like, really, really good players. But I do think this team needs to focus on that boundary defensive back. And so, you got Revel, you got Zaire Thomas here. It's very hard to differentiate the two. I think it's realistic that Shavon is a late first. So, out of realism, I'll go after Shavon. But I do think Zaire is a better corner. But Shavon also looks good in purple. I'll just say that. At number 32 for the Pittsburgh Steelers and ending off the first round. Again, remember, day 2 is rounds 2 and 3, and it's going to be coming out tomorrow. Wide receiver, absolutely on the board. I think Jaden Higgins almost played himself into the first round. This dude's an absolute stud. I mean, I don't know why people don't like him to that degree, but he dominates everywhere he goes, and it's just it's a little bit ridiculous. Boundary corner 2, though. I absolutely think Zaire Thomas, Darien Porter should definitely be on the board. And then you could talk about QB. I'm not going to do that. But defensive line, like you could go Kenneth Grant here. You should get a successor to. Why am I forgetting Hayward's name? Jeepers. So to Hayward on the defensive line, and you could again go after edge. You got JT Tuimalau, but the guy who I think I would want the most, which I'm not going to select him this time, but Steelers fans, please let me know what you think. Jahad Campbell to play edge. Like, if there's a team to make it work, this is the team to make it work, right? You think about, man, why am I forgetting people's names? Wisconsin edge rusher that we have, Herbig. Like, you think about Herbig, that's the exact role you want Jahad Campbell in. And with TJ getting up there in age, not a bad idea. Just let me know what you guys think about that. I really like that idea. But I will actually be going corner here. And you got Amos, Porter, Thomas. Both of them, all 3 are excellent players. Porter is going to be somebody who he's a little bit older at 24, but very limited reps and phenomenally good at the rate that he is. Best ball skills in the class outside of Travis Hunter. and amazingly quick feet. If you really don't like it, talk to me about it, but we're going to go Darien Porter to end off the first round. Again, I think he's 6'3", but long arms, smooth athlete, former wide receiver, multiple punt blocks as well. We love our special teams, and I think he's going to be a damn good player. Last time we drafted a corner named Porter at 32, ended up being our corner 1, so we're going to do it again. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.